Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, officers. Welcome to this meeting of the Economy and Development Select. We've got a number of additional members and obviously quite a few officers here in the front this morning. Obviously, Abergavenny members, you're very welcome for your agenda item. You're more than welcome to stay afterwards, but if you need to go after item 4, thank you very much for your attendance. So before we go into the main agenda items, if we just go and do a short introduction for those watching at home. So I'm Councillor Paul Pavia and I'm chair of this committee.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services.
Rachel Rogers, Museum Manager.
Ian Saunders, Head of Tourism, Leisure, Culture and Youth.
Tim Lewis, Events and Special Projects.
Kath Fallon, Head of Enterprise and Community Development.
Francis Williams, Chief Officer Enterprise.
Jez Becker, Committee Member.
Matt Fakins, Committee Member.
Sheila Woodhouse, Member for Grovefield Ward, Abergavenny, observing.
County Councillor Paul Jordan, Cabinet Member for Governance and a Councillor for Cantref Ward, Abergavenny.
Brian Strong, a member of this committee.
Alan Davis, Deputy Chair of the committee.
Richard Roden, member of this committee.
Dave Evans, Councillor for West End Ward, Callicott.
Yeah, Jim Higginson from 7 Ward, Callicott, just observing. Be interested in the Callicott element.
And Councillor Dovey as well, David Dovey from Chepstow. We just missed you, but you're very welcome. I do apologise. I should welcome obviously the Caldecott members as well for their item on the regeneration. So of course Jim and Dave, you're very, very welcome. And of course those members are more than happy for you to ask questions for those particular items. I know you're here as observers, but you know these are areas that really affect your wards, so you're more than welcome to speak. So if we go then into the main items on the agenda, and item number 1 then is apologies for absence. Richard, do we have any apologies?
Just one apology from Councillor Grobcut, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, item number 2, declarations of interest on items on the agenda. Any declarations at this stage? No. Okay.
I don't think you need to declare unless we actually, or the committee actually goes into detail about the application. I think at this stage you're probably okay with that.
Councillor Figgins?
Just to declare that I'm sit on the shadow board member of Modern Life.
If you just fill in your pro forma then and pass it to Richard at the end, that'd be great. Okay, item number 3 then is the public open forum. I don't think there's any member of the public going to take that opportunity this morning. So then item number 4 is the pre-decision scrutiny of the Abergavenny outdoor structure. Members will remember, or certainly committee members here will remember this item coming before us back in October of last year, and there were a number of issues and questions and queries that we had for officers at the time to take back and work on. I know apologies, it's taken some time for you to find a space on the agenda. It's been really a really busy year, but we're certainly very happy that it's come back towards us now. I don't know whose office is going to lead on. Rachel, are you going to lead on this? Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much. As Councillor Pavia said, we're here today to update you on the proposed Abergavenny Castle Events Pavilion and to answer questions which were asked at the previous meeting that we attended. If I can first give you some background as to why this project is important. Abergavenny Castle has a rich history of hosting events. The history goes back to the late 19th century and includes circuses, balloon ascents, fireworks and community fetes. In more recent years, it's included historical reenactments, outdoor theatre and charity events. When carrying out the museum's review and when writing our 5-year forward plan, the ongoing sustainability of the museum service was a key consideration. This project forms an important part of this work. Our service comprises museums in Chepstow, Monmouth and Abergavenny, and the museum collections in Caldecott. A vibrant events programme will be important in the financial sustainability of all our museums and collections, and crucially will also contribute to our wider cultural role of encouraging our communities and visitors to participate in heritage and the arts. Hosting events is not just about encouraging people to attend the event itself, but is a way of increasing people's confidence in accessing museums by ways that are more familiar to them. Monmouthshire Museums is a member of the Happy Museum Project community, which provides a framework for museums to develop a holistic approach to wellbeing and sustainability. The project reimagines the museum's purpose as steward of people, place and planet, supporting institutional and community resilience in the face of global financial and environmental challenges. The Welsh Government reports relating to culture and poverty, and Light Springs Through the Dark both talk about event spaces as a catalyst for vibrancy and diversity, by enabling local communities to access their local heritage in a way comfortable to them and contributing to quality of place. An event space is not just about providing cover in the rain, but contributes to Monmouthshire's role to provide more than traditional museum buildings in the provision of culture and heritage. You will be familiar with the project itself, but if I may summarise some key changes since we last met and outline the information we are returning with today. At the previous meeting, we asked committee to consider a loan of £32,000 towards this project. Since then, we have secured 2 lots of funding and have become aware of a further funding opportunity which we are applying for. We are therefore not asking for a loan. The overall size of the structure has also been reduced. It has gone in length from just under 22 metres to just over 18 metres, and the overall height levels have also been reduced. Further information was requested by you. There are 9 pieces of information in total, and I appreciate some further discussion may be required, but if I initially run through each one for you. Number 1, costings of the build. Full details have been provided for you in Appendix 1, Table 2. Please note that an additional amount has been added to the original sum to make provision for toilets. Number 2, that Abergavenny Town Council be approached for funding towards the project. Appendix 2 confirms that £30,000 has been awarded by them. Number 3, confirmation that the lease with the Neville Estate will continue beyond 2020. Appendix 3 provides a letter of intent from them. Number 4, you asked about projected income generation. Some detail is shown in Appendix 4. Throughout this, we have used our experience of previous events to inform our workings, and we have been realistic with our income and expenditure predictions. However, these figures have been revised since we last met to reflect changing circumstances. They do not now include the repayment of the loan, as we are not asking for that, and they also do not include cost for Portaloos, as we have considered an alternative option. Number 5, you asked us to consider the installation of permanent toilets rather than relying on Portaloos. We have identified an area within the castle grounds that previously housed public toilets. Preliminary investigations have shown that drainage and water supplies are still in place. The area is self-contained and surrounded by a wall. There is currently a steel container in there which could be replaced by a more suitable building. We've had some estimated costs and have included this proposal within a funding bid which we are currently putting together following a successful first stage bid. In our expenditure, we have included some cleaning costs. However, it is not our intention that these will become public toilets. They will be events toilets only. Number 6, you asked for clarifications of the advantages of a permanent structure over a marquee and the issues that would arise if it was not installed. This is outlined in section 5 of the report. We've also carried out a full comparison of permanent versus temporary within a heritage impact assessment. A summary is as follows. The high cost of hiring in marquees and lack of opportunity to secure grant funding. A better opportunity for a sympathetic design that has a lower impact on the setting of the scheduled ancient monument than a temporary structure erected for the whole summer season. Less risk of ground erosion with permanent structure, and it being easier for community groups to use. For example, power will already be included. It is also more flexible for groups such as school children eating their lunch or groups using it for short periods. Number 7, you asked about the value to tourists as well as the local community, and this has been outlined on page 18 of the business case in Appendix 1. You asked about the potential for the structure to be used as a wedding venue, and this has been mentioned in Appendices 5 and 7. We've included this as an activity in our income and expenditure profile. Please note our focus would be on ceremonies and daytime receptions rather than evening, in line with our role as a community asset and a good neighbour. Number 9, the opportunities for local businesses, volunteers and Monmouthshire ambassadors to be involved in the project. This is outlined in appendices on pages 16 to 18 and on the events feasibility study in Appendix 7. Consultation took place with local event organisers as part of that feasibility, showing clear support for the Museum and Castle to become a recognised events venue within the town, with many organisations feeling they could use the venue, collaborate on joint initiatives and or support future events. Within our proposed programme, there are activities which we would carry out that would give opportunities for partnerships with local businesses. That concludes the list of queries that was raised, and so concludes my presentation. I would like to seek your comments regarding the project and the endorsement for the Outdoor Events Pavilion and Events Feasibility Study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Before I open it up to questions, I just welcome Councillor Howarth and Councillor Smith as well. You're very welcome this morning. Okay, so you've heard the presentation. You've heard the responses to some of the questions that we raised. Councillor Davis, do you want to kick off?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got several questions to ask, actually. From the document, you've already secured 128,000 from the Rural Community Development Fund, and you have 30,000 from Abergavenny Town Council, which I understand you're putting into the revenue budget for the project. So you've applied for 120,000 from another source. What happens if that source doesn't actually provide you with that revenue? Will you then be looking to the council, which is obviously a question for this committee? So that's the first question, but I have several questions around the financial. You mentioned financial sustainability as being important. And one of the points we made as a committee previously was that in the current situation, the authority is in a position really where we need to maximise our money and obtain tangible returns from any investment, because even if you do get the grant, at the end of the day, if the ADM goes ahead, this would come within that organisation, presumably, and therefore any liabilities or problems or failure to meet your expectations will fall within the ADM. I'm looking at the figures. I mean, currently, the museum services, the expenditure is £422,000 and the income is £74,000, which represents an operating cost of £347,000. And there's a comment in your document that says it is fair to say that there has not been a strategic approach to income generation to date, and I think that's a point very well made from previous experience that we've seen. If you look at the figures that you know, the predictions you were making for income, for example, in year one you were predicting a profit, but that is only a profit because of the £30,000 of revenue income you're getting from Abergavenny Town Council. If it wasn't for that, it would actually be an £18,000 loss. Similarly, you've got grants in the second year which you haven't actually secured yet. And I am afraid I have a bit of an issue with people putting grants that they haven't secured in accounts because they shouldn't be there. You haven't got it, so it shouldn't be there. And if they weren't there, you would actually have a loss of £8,170. In year three, similarly, you'd have a loss of £340. And then you start to go into profit. Now, as you'll appreciate, I'm ignoring the community benefits at the moment because I'm looking purely at it on a business application. And if you look at some of the, because I note that in your original presentation, you in fact weren't making any profit at all, really, and that was one of the questions that we were querying. And now all of a sudden we're making not substantial profits, but we are making some profits. If you look at wedding income, for example, year 2 is 2.3k, 9k, 12k, 12k. Well, I'd like some explanation on what you've based those assumptions on. And one thing that stood out for me was school activities, 1.5k, 2.2, 3k, 3k, 3k. Twilight sessions, nothing, 500, 2,000, 4,000. You know, I'd like to know on what basis you've come to those conclusions. If you look at your expenditure, for example, you're only spending 500 on advertising in the first 3 years, 750, and you know, is that really going to give you the benefits that you're predicting in terms of attendance and revenue? You know, if your business plan predictions are accurate, then it will deliver a very small revenue. My concerns are about what liabilities that may then leave any prospective ADM proposal with in the future. And moving on to a more social issue, you've mentioned vandalism in your presentation. Councillor Evans and I, at a facility in Caldicot, which Councillor Evans will be aware of, suffered severely from vandalism and associated with drug abuse. Right? And one of my concerns when I first saw the proposal was, is this going to be a magnet for antisocial behaviour? And I'm sure it's a concern for some of the residents as well. But I do notice in this proposal that there are shutters that can be pulled down. So one of my questions is, will this building be secured where, you know, when it's not in use? Because I would predict that if it's not, then it will be a magnet for antisocial behaviour. So I think that's about it from me. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So if I go through the questions in turn, you're right. I mean, the grant that we're asking for that hasn't been secured yet is a big chunk of the money. That was a 2-stage process, and we've been invited to go for the second stage of it. I think if we didn't get that 120,000, we need to take a pause and see what happened with the project, because it's a large sum of money. So I think that would be a point to review what was going on. Regarding the figures that you mention, you're right that in the first 2 to 3 years it's relying on grants, one of which has been secured. I think the area that we would look at if we didn't secure the grants would be around the events coordinator, and how much of an alternative there is to doing that in-house, which is how we do events at the moment. We do it within the core staffing, so that would be the obvious place to look at that. Regarding how we got to the different figures for each of the activities, those of them that we've done before, such as the reenactments, the outdoor theatre, we've based those figures on many years of doing the event, so they were relatively easy to predict how things would go there. Some of them are completely new things. So, for example, the weddings, we've had a look at other local providers, what they're charging for events, looked at what comparable, if we had marquee, for example, what that would cost to hire for events, and we've kept our estimations fairly low in that we were talking about in the first year 1 wedding rising to 4 weddings in year 5. So we've tried to keep that low for 2 reasons really. One, so we're not overstretching our ambitions there, but also because we are a community asset. We're not a wedding venue. It's obviously an event that we can hold, but it's certainly not something we're not wedding coordinators. In terms of you asked about the advertising and the marketing costs. We've got a good track record in utilising free and low-cost advertising. We make good use of social media. All of the museums have got a large list of supporters who we send communications out to. So we see that we would continue to utilise those networks and just use financial advertising for specific events or for groups of events. The vandalism question, yes, the sides have been added to keep people out so that it doesn't become a place to congregate, and we felt that that was important. So yes, that is the reason for those being added.
Just one
Have I
thing,
missed-
the twilight sessions, you've gone from no income to 500 income to 2,000 to 4,000. What do you base that on?
Yeah, sorry. So the twilight sessions, we wouldn't begin that until the year. So there's no income indicated, just because we feel that if we're introducing new events, we need to do that on a step-by-step process and not bring them all in at the same time. We've based those figures on having 2 events per year in the first year where I'm showing income, where 50 people would be attending, and we're doubling those events to 4 per year with 200 attending in year 5. So we've estimated the 50, again, on similar types of events we've done. We ran a silent disco in 2018 where 86 people came, so we felt that 50 wasn't, an extortionate amount. So yeah, we've picked those realistic numbers based on similar ventures that we've done. And then you asked about schools as well, didn't you? Yeah, the school activities, yeah. So we're looking there at a schools week. It's something we've done several times in the past based around our historical reenactments. So where we've had a reenactment that's set up for a weekend, they've come for the week beforehand and done provision for schools. Those figures are based on 2 schools a day initially, so a school in the morning and a school in the afternoon, come in Monday to Friday, and then rising to 2 schools in the morning and 2 schools in the afternoon by year 5. We haven't done those particular weeks very recently, but they were the sort of figures that we were reaching when we were doing them. So again, based on figures that we've reached in the past.
Presumably then those are admission charges, are they?
For school, yes, yeah, we charge an admission charge for activities like that where they come in, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, any questions?
No, I think that's enough from me for the time being, thank you.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Roden?
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about the attitude of Cadw and planning consent due to the historic nature of this site. Have you got any news and views on that? And secondly, I couldn't see a position on the plan where this is likely to be sited. I don't know if it's on the I don't know if you could explain where we're likely to see it if this goes ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been speaking to Cadw throughout this to get their advice on it, and obviously they will comment on it officially as part of the planning process. The site that we're talking about is as you come through the castle gate, immediately on the left-hand side. It's an open space at the moment. That site has been chosen for a variety of reasons. It sits outside of the scheduled ancient monument, peculiarly, but it does. So as far as Cadw is concerned, that is a preferred area. We have also thought about the setting. So we've looked at the other sites as well, because although that is outside the scheduled ancient monument, we felt it was important to see whether there were other areas that it would be better suited to. We looked at the very large area in the centre of the grounds where we host most of our events now. We felt that putting a structure there would actually restrict that area. You would lose that open space for events, which, if it's not raining, is where we would prefer to do our events. Clearly, the impact on the setting there as well would be huge, right in the centre. We also looked at an area at the far end of the site. There it was felt that it would have an undue effect on the setting because it's adjacent to the motte which the museum sits on. It would also be incredibly difficult to access because you would be taking vehicles, people, etc. across the entire site. We also looked at the area on the right-hand side as you come in, and it was felt there it would block views of the major part of the castle, the wall that goes that forms the major part of the castle there. In conversation with Cadw, we have located it where it is set slightly back so that when you walk into the castle grounds, you wouldn't immediately see it, so it wouldn't have an impact on your initial arrival of the site. Clearly, it's just off the entrance as well, so in terms of unloading for events and setting up events, it's much easier. You can come straight off the road. It's one of the reasons for having some hard standing outside it. You could park something, unload, and then go again. And in terms of making provision for things like electricity, it's obviously much easier to feed it in directly from outside there. Cadw have also looked at the design of it as well and given us their unofficial comments on that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Fegans.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel. For me, it's difficult always to put a figure on what a community asset will deliver and how you value that community asset. For me, taking away the business case out of this, just looking at it as a building, does providing a building on that site allow for a better use of that site and provide a better serviceability in that area for existing users as well as potential new users as well. And I think the net conclusion for that has got to be that it's a yes. So I think the business case aside, which I would have some concerns of regarding the sort of future budgets and the future costings that have been included in that budget to date, in that business case to date, I wouldn't necessarily think reflect the true market of those sorts of events and the sort of required levels of funding that you would require in order to obtain those events to that site. So stripping that away for a second, just looking at the bare essentials, you know, is this building going to provide a net asset to the community? I think it's got to be yes, which I'll come back to. There's obviously a cost at the moment for us providing temporary marquees, and this building would replace that cost. Just for, do you know what that cost is of that temporary provision of the temporary marquees? If I can come back then.
So a marquee is somewhere between £2,000 and £3,000 for that size.
And what are we spending per year on that side?
Well, at the moment we don't.
Right,
you know, so it's the fact is that there are many things that we don't do because we can't take that risk on a revenue basis.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's answered that question. Thank you. Just regarding the fact that this is going to potentially be put over into a new structure, do the grant applications that have gone in and the next stages of those grant applications, are they affected by the fact that it will no longer be an MCC vehicle, but it would be a Mon-Life vehicle that would be making those grant applications? And would that potentially mean that the grant application that's already gone in and been delivered, should this service to go over to a new vehicle, would that grant application be rolled over, and would that grant funding be rolled over, or would a new grant application have to be made?
The application that we've already secured has been done under Monmouthshire County Council and would need to come to Monmouthshire County Council, and then the appropriate agreements made between MCC and the new body. The stage, the one that we've got in at the moment, we haven't actually put anybody's name on there. That's got to be in February. So I think that would be a discussion over the next couple of months about what the most appropriate way to do that is. But that organisation is aware that these changes are coming up, so it's not going to come as a surprise to them.
Any other questions? Councillor Davis? Sorry, Councillor, can you just put your microphone on?
I concentrated on the financial side because I think whether ADM comes to fruition or not, somebody is going to take on the liability for that building. As a community asset, they're not, you know, it is a really good community asset. I don't think there's any argument about that. If I was taking it on, I'd be concerned about the financial aspects of it and the ongoing maintenance costs and liabilities associated with it. But as it stands at the moment, this is not costing the authority any money, assuming that you get, you know, the grants that you're hoping for. If it was, I would say it's a nice to have, not a need to have. But, you know, I'm in favour of the proposal in terms of its community impact, and it has potential. But I think, you know, need to think carefully about promoting it, making sure that it's not vandalised, and making sure that, you know, it's used, and that obviously the promotion of it is important there. So even though I have some concerns on the financial side, I would say as a community asset, it would be a good acquisition for Abergavenny and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Davis. Any? Yeah, Councillor Buttos.
Thank you, Chair. As a local member for this, the castle, my actual ward is a neighbouring ward. Abergavenny has a wonderful asset. You know, we have this fantastic venue, we have the castle. It's good to see that the potential has been looked at, what can be enhanced with all. We do have some lovely events taking place there. And yes, an outdoor structure would really be beneficial with regard to a question Councillor Feakin raised about the actual asset to the community, the fact that this would enhance what's already there. Yes, it's got to be done properly, and quite rightly the committee have been questioning the figures, and it's also important to note that several grants have already been realised, the Town Council and the Rural Community Development Fund. So if this structure goes ahead, it would, obviously what I'm saying is, be very beneficial. What I would like to see, and it has been mentioned several times in this paperwork, that residents, neighbours' views they're consulted, taken into consideration. In fact, conditions be built into this at a planning stage. The types of events, the frequency of events, the timing of events, cut-off times, to sort of look after the neighbours who are right on the border of the castle, because it is in a residential area. With regard to the antisocial behaviour, yes, but I understand now that the structure is going to be completely enclosed and there'll be no recesses where people could sort of sit and undercover if they could get into the grounds, because I understand the castle's gates are locked. So I'm just trying to put Abergavenny's perspective on this from it being a local ward member. We would like to see the neighbours' views way up there taken into consideration. And yes, this could enhance what already happens at the castle with a view to expanding on some of the existing events. As Rachel quite rightly pointed out, you can't possibly put marquees up at the moment yourself. People have to come in and they have to put marquees up there for their own events. So it will change the sort of offer to people, attract people to the castle. And also in the paperwork, something I noticed, 26,000 is it visitors per annum to the castle as it is now. So it is a very popular, sought after place to visit when visitors come to Abergavenny. Thank you.
Just in answer to some of your questions there about the neighbours, we have been speaking to the neighbours, and some of the proposals have been revised as a direct result of speaking to them. In the planning application as well, we have drafted some conditions or some suggested conditions around it in terms of what time we suggest that event should be finished, that we can open up that as a discussion if it was felt appropriate in planning to impose that for events that happen in this structure. But as well, I think it's worth noting that the type of events we're doing are not, on the whole, events that we would expect to be going on, very late or being very loud in the main. So we would try and keep those to a minimum, whilst trying to get a balance of not restricting the types of events we do too much, but with proper consideration to those that live close by.
I've got Councillor Feakins wanting to come back, but as Councillor Woodhouse has spoken, I'm going to give opportunity for other Abergavenny area councillors to speak. So Councillor Powell first, and then Councillor Jordan.
Sorry, actually I am the councillor for Castle Ward. I've never been quite sure, no, even estates can't really tell me where the boundary is, so probably Sheila's got a bit of it as well. As I said, I'm on the planning committee, so I sort of can't come down on one side there. Just a couple of questions. When the food festival comes, that wouldn't be big enough for what they want, and they will put their own marquees and things like that up. Who do they stand the cost for all that, do they?
Yes, so when the food festival use the site, they bring in all their own marquees and cover the cost of that. This structure is actually roughly the same size as one of the marquees that they put on that site. So, I have discussed this with them. There is a logical conclusion that they don't need to then hire a marquee and can make the appropriate fee to us instead. That would be the logical conclusion there.
Can I just come back? If they did use our building, if it's put up, then therefore they would have to pay a rent for it, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have to go in there for nothing. So that would be an income, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would put it to them, and I have put it to them that they would not have to hire a marquee, so therefore they could effectively hire it from us instead.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I had a meeting with Rachel and Councillor Tudor-Thomas and Martin Grocott earlier in the week, and went through these proposals. It was quite clear it's going to be a very good community asset. The concerns I had at the time was principally relating to security, but we've been reassured that because they're going to some additional expense in providing security by way of closures between the walls, between the pillars of the structure. Vandals won't be able to get in unless they've got a JCB or something. The concern I had then, and I still have a residual concern, is the revenue figures, whether they will be able to have the suggested income, but then that's a matter for them. So far as Monmouthshire County Council is concerned, we're not actually putting any money into this, and on balance I would say let's run with it. A question I raised earlier in the week was whether this structure would attract a separate council tax demand. I'm not sure whether Rachel's found that out, because it's a structure and it will have facilities by way of toilets. It may be that an additional figure would have to go in the expenditure column. But on the whole, certainly I'm very supportive.
Yeah, I have raised this issue about the rates and haven't managed to get a satisfactory answer to it yet. But I have had a look at similar structures, although it's quite difficult to find a similar structure because the nearest I can really get is a village hall, and of course that's a building in a very different way. There's obviously a question that once we're within the ADM as well, how business rates are looked at under that. So it's a question I've raised so that if it comes back and there is a cost there, we can revise the business plan accordingly.
Okay, Councillor Feakins.
Cheers. And only to say, I should have mentioned it when I spoke earlier, but you came to us a year ago with a proposal, and which we threw some sticks in the wheel as you were going along, and we asked you to come back and bring it back, and you did, and what you've presented to us today is by far superior than what it was last year. So just to say thank you very much for listening to what we said last time and bringing back a much superior project. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, observations? Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps I'm a little bit thick, but there is one area is not really clear to me, and that is a lot of these activities that this is going to take on are already going on in the area, so they're being transferred, if you like. What I haven't been able to get my head around, and I'm sure my colleague across here is going to say you're thick, Dovey. What I can't get my head around is the value of the incremental value of the business that this is going to bring. If we didn't, the point I'm making is, if we didn't do anything, there's a lot of activities here that we're not going to lose anyway. If we have it, some of those activities are going to be transferred into the new building and form part of the new case. What I want to know is, what do you foresee as the additional profit, if you want to put it like that? What are we getting extra out of it? I could see the facility and all of that. I just want to know, very simply for me, what our forecasts are in hard cash that we're going to benefit from for having this thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Levy.
In Appendix 1 on the business case, we have outlined in 4.2 the latent demand here. In answer to your specific questions about the events that we're running at the moment, on the list of events that the events that we've said should happen here, you're right, reenactments and outdoor theatre already happen. However, what we see is a drop in figures should the weather not be favourable to us. So what we'd be able to do with those particular ones that we already run is we'd be able to maintain the figures that you would see on a sunny day. There are many activities in here that we don't do at the moment. So there was, in particular, activities for older adults, the twilight sessions that we talked about. We have a very limited amount of concerts, small concerts and things, simply because when we've looked at it in the past, trying to bring in a temporary structure, it just doesn't add up. You'll be aware in Chepstow, there's a very strong programme of the art on screen, the cinema on screen that you run. That's something that my colleague Annie Rainsbury in Chepstow is very involved in there, and would very much like to do across all of the sites. So there are activities like that we just really can't even contemplate at the moment. There's also then those activities which are not so much financially driven and happen at the moment, but not very satisfactorily. And I'm thinking of things like when children come in and go around the site, and then the inevitable question of, is there somewhere where we can eat our sandwiches? And the answer to that is, well, there isn't really at the moment. So in terms of the quality of their visit, it would improve things like that as well.
Sorry, you just haven't answered my question. I can understand the additional activities that might come from this. What I want to know is what the income is from the activities that we don't do at the moment. That is what I'm trying to get at. The incremental value that we're going to get over over a piece when this is redeveloped from where it is at the moment and what we earn at the moment. It has to be earning an income. And I'm not clear about that at all. I want something, an indication in terms of percentage on top of what we get at the moment, or indeed pound shillings and pence would be really nice. An estimated figure of what the extra revenue is.
So on Appendix 4, with the projected income and expenditure under item 1, event income, all of the events between 3 and 10 are events that we don't currently do at the moment. So the figures, and there are figures next to those showing what that would bring in.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. So just to summarise, then, I think we've all agree it's an important community asset, and as Councillor Woodhouse said, it's got great potential to enhance the castle's offer and to enhance, the services, whether it's Monmouthshire County Council or the ADM in the future. The offer that we can provide clients coming forward. But I think as a number of councillors said, the business plan has to be watertight and has to stand on its own merits. So, it is important that we look at the costings, the financial costings and benefits of the project, and that the 5-year projected profile was interrogated, and rightly so. There's obviously issues around the security of grant revenue. We know it's at stage 2. It's not been secured yet. And though while obviously some contingency planning has been done, if the realisation of the substantial grant offer doesn't materialise, then there'll have to be some sort of pause, and I think officers realise that. In terms of the financial challenges, we know that tourism, museum and leisure services have been long at the forefront of as non-statutory services, and a suite of non-statutory services has been at the forefront of realising substantial savings for the medium-term financial plan, and that's obviously why we're looking at the ADM as a potential new model, because it is unsustainable. So we certainly welcome you bringing back this proposal from where it was last year. But there's still I think some concerns around some of the financial elements. We've explored, and in terms of antisocial behaviour, I think there was assurances on that in terms of its security, so that's fine. We looked at planning, and particularly CADU's intentions. Obviously, that's not going to materialise until it comes to the planning stage. In terms of grant funding, moving to the new structure, as Councillor Feekins has said, this is going to become an asset and a liability of the new ADM. So, issues like business rates, as you just one of the members just pointed out, realising that is going to be an important aspect of that moving forward. It's great that you've explored this with client users like the Abergavenny Food Festival, and obviously they can see the potential benefit there, and it could be an additional revenue stream, renting that to those long-term users. The food festival is going to be with us for some time, I hope. Councillor Woodhouse spoke about residents and neighbours' views. Really important. They're fully taken into consideration in terms of how this project develops. I think that's most of the issues that were discussed. So there's 2 recommendations. So recommendation 2.1 is to endorse the business case for the outdoor events pavilion at Abergavenny Castle, and 2.2 to endorse the Abergavenny Castle events feasibility study. Are members content to recommend them, to approve them, or do we want caveats? Councillor Davis?
Can I just clarify that we are voting on the basis that there is no financial input from this authority, and that if the ADM goes ahead, this element of what they offer, it will come under the ADM proposal before we vote.
So do members want that as a caveat as part of the recommendation 1? There's no financial burden, as it were, on the authority, and it would move to the ADM for the ADM to take forward. Richard, did you capture Councillor Davis's word in there? Yeah. Any other caveats to agree? No. Councillor Feakins?
I'm going to abstain from voting, Chair.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Feakins is going to abstain from the voting. Okay, so are we happy then with that caveat put forward by Councillor Davis to endorse the business case? So 2.1, do we vote in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and 1 abstention. And then 2.2 to endorse the Abergavenny Castle events feasibility study. You happy to agree that? Yeah, all in favour? Again, 6 and 1 abstention. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you, Abergavenny members. We're just going to take a very, very short recess, just a couple of minutes, while we just plug in the IT system and get the slide presentation ready. Okay, thank you. Okay, if we look to take our seats then, we'll make a start. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. So agenda item number 5 then is the presentation regarding Caldecott Regeneration Scheme, which is part of the Cardiff Capital Region City deal. I think Kath is going to lead us on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You have actually had this information before, but it really is by way of an update because things have moved on quite quickly over the last few months, really. So just to remind ourselves, really, we looked at this initially as to an opportunity to maximise a strategic funding opportunity that had come through the Target Regeneration Investment Fund, which basically is a £100 million pot with £45 million earmarked for South East Wales. The intervention rate at 70% is very strong for us, and which is why we looked at an opportunity to match with some existing Section 106 funding in existence in Caldecott. Priorities are actually built around addressing social issues, job creation, provision of affordable housing, and also well-being of communities. So the schemes that we brought forward address those priorities, but also move us on from the visioning work that was done probably about 3-4 years ago. So although it seems that this perhaps is why we're looking at Caldecott and not at other towns, there has been a lot of work done there previously. The Section 106 match funding was there. It was an ideal opportunity in terms of the abolition of the bridge tolls as well, and we've really had a good opportunity with Welsh Government to access this funding. So we're looking at a total funding pot of all the different projects of about 10 million, with 7 million coming from the TRI funding. We're basically based around 5 key projects. We've got the cross-destination space, which we're now looking to link into some feasibility work around Church Road. We're looking at the enterprise co-working space, the refurbishment of the retail parade, some potential housing on Jubilee Way car park, and also the Urban Centre Property Enhancement Fund. So 4 of those are what we term as strategic projects. The 5th one, which is the Urban Centre Property Fund, is actually a thematic project which will run through the region, is actually being administered through Rhondda and Taff Council on behalf of the other authorities. So if I just show you some graphics, really. So the presentation, really, the rest of it is really just some images. But the one we're looking at initially is going to be the cross-destination space. We've recognised for a while there's some issues there in terms of, cluttering of space. We needed to simplify some of the activity that's going on there. Traffic is very dominant, particularly on Church Road, which needs management. There's also a linkage issue between the town centre and the Caldecott Castle and Country Park, which we needed to address. So this is one of the schemes we're looking at initially, but also the public transport facilities needed to be improved. So this is some of the imagery that we'd be looking at in terms of obviously the new landscaping and furniture to the cross area. All those things are being worked up at the minute. So in terms of visuals, these are just sketches at the minute. We should have more information by the end of this month. It's been quite fluid, but at the same time it's moving fairly rapidly as well. So in terms of consultation, we've been putting these images in the Caldecott Hub. We've been undertaking surveys, but also the imagery is actually in the reception in County Hall at the minute if you wanted to have a closer look. And this is a view then that's sort of more from Church Road end. As we started looking more at the cross space, we realised the impact in terms of Church Road and the current traffic mobility issues there at the moment, the movement. So as part of an additional bid that we've put in through the local transport fund, we'll be looking at some feasibility work there as well, with a view to sort of moving some improvements down that area. The other thing we've looked at is the enterprise and co-working space. I know sort of members within this committee have raised this as an opportunity in the past. We have evidence. There's something called the Grimsey Review, which is the guy who actually used to be Chief Exec of Iceland. It moves on from the Portus Review of High Streets a few years back, and there is actual evidence that where you put co-working spaces within town centres, it does actually increase footfall and therefore improves the local economy. We also recognise that Caldecott as one of the heaviest footfalls in terms of the hub, but also the fact that it has some underutilised space. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at that really in terms of a better use of our buildings as part of this scheme. We also see it as an opportunity to how we improve the linkage between the Asda store and the actual high street as well. It's one of the other reasons we've looked at this. Clearly, at the moment, Caldecott's a town centre where, unfortunately, the first thing you see is the back of the shops rather than the front as you would on a normal high street. So part of this is looking at the refurbishment of the Newport Retail Parade. These are just some of the imageries that we'll be looking at, really, but the design palette itself is yet to be set. Again, just looking at opportunities for sort of more of a leisure destination, which is, as we know, how the high streets are moving going forward. You'll see now the changing dynamic in the high street more towards hairdressers, coffee shops, things that you can't buy online really. Although there is some sort of a bit of a growing trend now where in terms of Amazon are now opening shops so we can actually try on items as and order them and having things altered, etc. So we all know, I mean, it's quite often in the press in terms of high streets going through a very changing dimension. What we need to understand is how we ensure that we future ready Caldecott High Street as much as we can, particularly with the additional housing that's going to be coming forward. The fact that we've also sort of recently procured Castlegate Business Park. There's a lot going on really that we're trying to capitalise on. The Jubilee Way housing scheme really is one that obviously will need to go through planning and everything else as we go forward. The car park in there that we are looking at will also sort of will lend itself to a housing scheme at the rear of that, but also ensuring that we don't lose any of the official car parking spaces. There's also public toilet provision there that we're looking at to ensure that still remains. So there's a fair few things that are still being worked through at the moment. Again, these are just different sort of dynamics really in terms of some of the imagery and the sort of colour palettes and things and the stone and etc. that are being proposed. Similar thing again really, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at really and how everything will tie in together in terms of the improvements. Also, the Urban Centre Property Enhancement Fund, which I mentioned, was actually going to be administered through Rhondda and Taff. Potentially £1 million pot there for us to look at in terms of how we refurbish the neighbouring retail and employment property to ensure that everything is aligning, and the fact that we don't have some areas of the high street been done, some that haven't. So in fairness to Welsh Government, they encouraged us to take the scheme wider, which is what we've done. So in terms of outcomes, we're clearly looking at some improved public space enhancement, some co-working space, improvements to the retail block, some extended, some refurbished, residential units, which all in all will lead to safeguarded jobs and hopefully some created jobs, some public realm that's going to be enhanced, and quite importantly, some additional residential units in terms of 2-bed and 1-bed properties, which we know there's a need for in the area. So ultimately, we're looking to sort of provide a stimulus to the Sound Centre with a view to improving investor confidence, improving the in-town living and activity, but also importantly as well in terms of how we make better connectivity and link destinations within the town. This is also part of a wider, broader regeneration framework that we've developed, which is really about how we look at a diverse town centre for all. We're looking at prosperity, connectivity, how we look at a healthier Caldecott. We're actually in conversations. We're developing conversations with the health provision in Caldecott at the moment as well, see how we can work with them better going forward, and also how we integrate the new school as well and look at the learning offer. This really looks more at the connectivity, as I've mentioned, in terms of how we improve linkages with the castle, but also linkages in with the school, to really make it feel that it all flows a lot better and also sort of reflects more the active travel and cycling and walking opportunities as well. And just to say, we have already actually drawn some funding in that's up and running. There's actually some marketing activity and promotion activity that's actually going on tomorrow in Caldecott as part of a planting scheme and part of a local authority green infrastructure capital bid that's gone forward and is actually starting delivery. So it's very much about improving the ambience and the environment as well of Caldecott, not just about the regeneration element. Again, this looks at the green infrastructure in terms of where the tree planting is going to be to improve, and also looking at cycling, signage and things like that. In terms of progress to date then, we obtained Cabinet approval on the 5th of September for the wider Cardiff Capital Region regeneration plans. So we're one of the 10 authorities that put forward schemes. This enabled us to submit a project development funding application. So in terms of some of the design works and things like that, we've been able to draw in 50% of the costs. So that was approved in October. We're currently finalising the design works. I did mention that we've been undertaking some consultation. There's some issues that have been raised by the local community in terms of the cross-destination space. So we're ensuring that we're addressing some of the issues that have been raised there as part of the scheme going forward. We were also made aware of the Local Transport Fund, and we were asked to submit a very quick bid, which we did, to the Local Transport Fund of 369,000. We hope to hear back from that sort of next week. Cabinet then in November approved the submission to Welsh Government for our cross-destination space. That's about £1 million. An enterprise space, which is the refurbishment of the co-working space and hub, of 200,000. Again, that went in on Tuesday of this week, and we're hoping to have the ministerial decision next week. And also a similarity for the Urban Centre Property Enhancement Grant Fund as well, which is another £1 million. So what they've done, that's a £10 million pot, and arbitrarily they've sort of given £1 million to each area. So, you know, our role now is to make sure we spend all our money in case others don't. And so that was considered on Tuesday. Verbally, we've been given positive soundings, but we obviously need to wait for the ministerial approval. Although the community consultation is underway, we are still reviewing it. There is a survey. We'll be mentioning that again. We're due to see the Town Council on Tuesday evening, so we'll discuss that again with them. If people have got comments they wish to make and they haven't felt they've done that yet, then the opportunity is there. So simultaneously, we're also continuing our negotiations with the Newport Road property owners. It's quite a mix of different owners there. We need to get everybody to tie into the scheme, otherwise we're not going to get that nice feel about the town, everything matching up. So that's something that my colleague Deb Hill-Howells is working on. We're also looking to develop a design manual for the Urban Centre Property Enhancement Grant to ensure that we use the same palette, similar colour schemes, again, to ensure that it ties together. So working with planning colleagues in terms of block planning consents, grant application process, etc., etc. So a fair bit of work we've done to date, but now the real work starts in terms of delivery. So sort of open it up to the floor, really.
Thanks, Kath. It's obviously a great opportunity securing external funding to help us do this. Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of things, really. I mean, you touched on how the scope of the cross area is extended down to Church Road slightly. I mean, that's already an absolute nightmare down Church Road with people mounting the pavements during school delivery times and all sorts. So, I mean, can you tell us a bit about what you might be looking to extend down there to help with those situations? Is there something that you mean?
As part of the Local Transport Fund, what we've done is ask for some funding to actually look at how we come up with a scheme that fits for that area. As we started working with Cross Space, it became very clear that we need to look at how we address that issue as well. There's also a school a bit further down that's causing the same problem. So I know, you know, and for us as well is how we increase traffic to the castle and back and forth in terms of improving that linkages and footfall. So it's something that we're working on. In terms of, obviously it's highways and operations colleagues that are far better versed in this than I am, but the scheme itself has been worked up at the moment with a view that we will be looking to extend that down to Church Road, but clearly we need to draw in that funding as well, in addition to make it part of the wider scheme.
Okay, so it's very much a sketchy sort of outline at the moment.
At the moment, yeah.
Another thing, the shared workspace, the hub, as somebody who actually spends the bulk of his week in a very successful shared workspace in Bristol now, I look at the potential of an area like that and I think that's brilliant, but what are we thinking in terms of, I would prefer to see a private company which specialises in shared workspaces in that building rather than us trying to do a bit of a half-assed job of trying to get some people in there like a glorified library to work. So, I mean, do we have any plans on how to best maximise that shared workspace?
We've had plans drawn up. We're looking at 10 desks, basically, and we're looking at various ways in terms of how that will work. The same working with Deb Hillhouse and her team in terms of how we put that together. There are options for us to look at working with private companies. We are aware of those. So it's just a matter of working with colleagues really to work out the best scheme going forward. Our initial thought at the moment, in terms of our perspective, is actually drawing that funding in. And we've really got to get to the nitty-gritty in terms of how we make it work. But the plans are in development at the minute. We've got that scoping out.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see the funding coming forward for it. You know, just want to make sure that we make the most of that asset when it does hit. My only real concern about the whole thing, I think it's great that Caldecott's going to get this attention. My only real concern when it comes down to it is how much money are we going to spend doing up private landlords' buildings? You know, if you talk about the uniformity of the high street, and that's very important, but that does sound a bit like, to me, if I had a shop there, I could just wait until you give me a load of money to make my shop look nice.
In terms of the grant scheme, it's actually 70-30, so private sector landlords would have to put 30% in themselves. So, you know, at the end of the day, we have to, it is in terms of the situation we're in now, we've got an element of market failure in Caldecott. We need to look to how we address that. That is at the point where public sector steps in. The funding mechanisms are there. We need to ensure that we get some consistency. When we look at the town centre at the moment, you've got various different brandings, you've got various different sort of time frames in terms of when sort of properties have been built. We need to provide some uniformity to encourage people to come into a space which is far more conducive to a leisure destination, which is the way that we know high streets are going now.
Yeah, the 70-30 split does make me wince a little bit, to be honest. I still think that's very heavily weighted in their favour. But like I say, it's a problem we need to solve, and I prefer to see the town centre regenerated, certainly. So.
Yeah, it's an incentive, but in terms of if you're working in a co-working space, could we have a chat, please, to ensure that we get as much of your knowledge as we possibly can? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Kath for all the work she's done bringing this project to fruition, because those of us that live in Caldecott did think that this day would never come, actually. So, and I know that you've worked very hard on it, Kath, so thanks for that. Councillor Becker raised a point about the landlord, particularly on the, I'll describe it as the Lloyds Bank side of the, because that's where the major development is. And I know that there are discussions taking place, which I won't talk about. But certainly there have been issues with that landlord in terms of maintaining the buildings and that sort of thing, and I think you're aware of those. So, you know, that is a concern for me. I attended a meeting with Capital last week about car parking, and it was very good, actually. We had members from the Town Council, businesses that are currently in Caldecott, and parking is an issue. Even with, you know, you say that those houses are going to be built and we'll have the same number of parking spaces, anybody that goes to the town centre will tell you it's an issue, because the parking is restricted in the Waitrose car park. You can't, you know, there's a time limit, same with Asda. And there were some very good suggestions put forward there. Roger Hoggins was there. And I'm just wondering about, in terms of finance, whether there's scope within this, the finances available to provide more car parking spaces, in order that, obviously, if we want to attract people, we want to make sure that they can do it in comfort, they can park their cars and walk safely to the town centre. So I think that's an issue at the moment, which perhaps we need to address. But apart from that, I think it's an excellent scheme, and I ought to declare a personal interest because I live on Church Road. And one of my greatest concerns is the safety of the school children there. So I'm very, very pleased to see that that's being addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. What I would say, it's very much a team effort. Same Deb in terms of the landlord side of things, Roger and his team in terms of what's going on there. I also want to say that in terms of the community and partnership development team that we set up a while back, Jude Landon has been absolutely amazing in terms of working with the community and really bringing in the town team, etc., ensuring we've got as many stakeholders involved as possible. And I think when we set that team up, we weren't sure how that was going to work through. And I think when you look at Caldecott, you can see the difference that's making. In terms of the car parking strategy, that will enable us to draw in the further funds, but we need that evidence. And we are clear, it's been from day one in terms of some concerns that were raised in terms of town councillors about the car parking. So we're looking at it as a whole, and I hope then that will enable us to have a blueprint to look at other towns as well going forward. And this is very much the way we're approaching this, in terms of we've got a model now. We know, you know, in terms of which buttons we need to press in terms of Welsh Government's perspective. We've tried several times before to draw in fundings. I know in Abergavenny we put in a Vibrant and Viable Places bid that didn't go forward. So now we know, you know, in terms of how we can dress things up, and I think that's also been the added advantage as being part of the Cardiff Capital Region as well. You know, what we want to do is just duplicate, really, and the next one we're looking at potentially is going to be us. There's a few things that, you know, that are playing out there. We need to look at how we sort of strategize that, and again come up with a master plan that enables us to understand what all the issues are, understand what the community's concerns are, then come up with a scheme that is never going to please everybody, but will hopefully please as many people as possible. So.
Thank you, Kath. I'm just pleased that we are having the opportunity to talk about these things. Thank you.
Councillor Higginson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And yeah, as Councillor Davis, I'm pleased, and Kath deserves a lot of credit for the way that, you know, this has been pulled together. There are things around that area that have caused concerns for quite a while, and you've got the bus stop outside the police station, for example, and you know, and there's a pedestrian crossing right by the side of it. And if my recollection is correct, the bus stop would move further up Sandy Lane, you know, and take part of the green area way, and at least that would be considerably safer for anyone who wants to use the buses and that. And there's also a pedestrian crossing there, and you've got the traffic island where people can cross the road. And Councillor Davis is right. I mean, the people who own a considerable amount of buildings on the town, they've been a bit reticent in the past about doing anything, to be blunt about it. And you know, it's almost 25 years since Cardigan was pedestrianised. It's very close to that. And you know, for my part, they never did much to contribute towards making it, towards improving it. So as it stands now, I'm pleased that, you know, that at least there's an interest in there now to be a part of something that's going to make a tired town look a lot look a lot better and futuristic, if I put it that way. The car park at the back, I understand, you know, the issue there. Where we need properties for people to live in, and there's going to be some disruption, obviously. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's no gain without pain, and I look forward to that as well. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Evans, then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Kath and a working group as well for all the hard work they put into it. Car park, road traffic, let's put it this way, on Church Road. I had a meeting back some time ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, with Highways to try and deal with the congestion when school in the morning and the afternoon. And Monmouthshire County Council owned land at the back of Castle Park School. And I went up Sandy Lane, up Churchfield Avenue, turn right down to come to the back of the school. And it is feasible, and this is coming from the Highways, for that ground to be used as staff car parking and a drop-off area for parents. That would stop some of the congestion on Church Road when the schools are coming in and going out. That's the one thing, Cass. So I don't know if that could be come into the equation on Church Road.
Francis, yeah.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the school are actually starting to look into that as a potential option for staff car parking and a drop-off zone. But I will confirm that with Will and just make sure I'm correct on that. But it's my understanding they're looking at that exact scheme.
Can I come back in, Chair? That's the first thing. The crossing in Caldicot, there's concerns about what has been proposed. They're not against it, but they are concerned, especially for the people who are partially blind. They think that could cause an issue. The doctors' surgery. The doctors have got the room for extra doctors, but they can't get the doctors. And I was in conversation with the surgery last week, and this is what they've told me. They're quite happy to take on doctors, but they can't. There's no doctors out there prepared to come along. Not just in Caldicot, or in anywhere in Monmouthshire at the moment, because they're struggling to get them.
And neighbouring counties.
Yes, that's neighbouring counties as well. So, although the concerns has been around surgeries, I think the Health Board should be looking to encourage junior doctors to take these vacancies up. And the car parking at the back, Jubilee Way, I'm looking forward to seeing that, because at the moment the approach there looks terrible. With what is being proposed, it's going to make it a lot better for people coming into Caldicot, especially if they're coming in the first time. So I'm looking forward to this, and again, I'd like to thank you.
Kath, yep.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the cross space, it's become clear to us that we need some kind of definition or demarcation in terms of cars and pedestrians, and particularly in terms of people who have visual impairments or, you know, sort of disabilities. So Jude at the moment is trying to get hold of the local access group to try and discuss that with them. But this is all kind of things that we're going to be working on as part of the final design of the scheme. We'll also be looking at the provision of on-street loading area in Chepstow Road. We have looked to also about an opportunity in terms of moving the cross memorial, but we can't. Apparently there's steel rods in it that go 12 foot down. So according to Chris, who was involved in building it, so that's not really going to be feasible. So we just need to look at that. We are at the moment trying to get some dates to meet with Grey Hill Surgery. We've sent them the strategic framework so they understand what we're doing, but it's whether or not we can work with them on a different level. I can't do anything about the shortage of doctors, I'm afraid. But certainly we're trying to open up discussions with the Health Board in terms of how we can look at the provision there, how we can sort of build it perhaps into part of the wider scheme. So, thank you.
Councillor Feakins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kath. I don't envy the task of anyone who's trying to foresee what's going to happen to the High Street in the future. And we also know from previous experience with Welsh Development Agency that market intervention, where you've got market failure by a local authority or government, doesn't always work. And sometimes you can throw as much money at something as you want, and it just doesn't quite change it. Effectively, and looking at this with a broad brush view lens, effectively what we're having to redo is redesign the space within town centres to make them useful for future generations and for us now and for future generations moving forward. And obviously there's lots of different views on how to make that better. And it's all very well of us to say the High Street's failing, and yet we've got Mike Ashley, who is mopping up the High Street and is being very successful with it. So it's not all of the High Street that's failing, it's just certain elements of it's failing. Banks have been lambasted this morning in the press about removing the facilities that they have in the High Street. That's a market force. We're not going to change that probably. So I think that looking at the broad brush aspect of it would be to look at what are the drivers for that area. You've got the incubator obviously is a key driver, or will be a key driver for that area. Co-working space in conjunction with that incubator is a key element of it. But it's also about how do we as a county, because possibly once we've finished doing this project in Caldicot, we're going to look at doing different projects in other towns, because this is a town, you know, this is an international issue, conundrum, right across the board. It's not just local, but we're very lucky that we are focusing this amount of cash in this very area, so it's important for us to look at all the different elements to try and get it as right as we can. And for my thinking, it would come to branding. What's going to make Caldecott different to Chepstow or to Monmouth or whatever that is? You know, if you build a totem pole, people will come and look at that totem pole. But if every town builds a totem pole, you know, they're not going to go to every town and look at that individual totem pole. So it is about branding. But the other thing to bring into that as well, obviously, we're looking at and considering bringing into living space back into the town centres. At the moment, all the town centres, the majority of town centres, are shops on the ground floor with vacant areas and storage space above, which is in dilapidation and etc. If we are bringing living back into the high street, which I think is an important key element of making that transition into the future and into making this a new livable space, it's very important for us to consider that we bring in all ages into that high street. It's very easy to build flats for executives or those executive type flats where we're focusing on a higher income bracket to bring in those people in, because they're the people who want drinking in the coffee shops and that go into the gym facilities and those sorts of things. Well, actually, it would be a far better approach if we do have the ability to intervene in this at this moment in time, to bring in the whole cross-section of people back into that area, from families to elderly and people with all abilities, to make sure that we get that mix of space utilisation correct. But again, it's... I mean, you're doing you've obviously done all the work on this, but it's probably a matter of speaking to the futurists to find out what that shop space is going to be, whether you have pop-up space or whether you just leave void spaces that we have control of. They're all big ticket items, and I don't propose to, I'm not asking for any answers out of those. One thing I would ask for an answer for would be that if you've got shops in a row and you've got a very healthy grant facility in place, 70% grant facility is very healthy, but there still might be some shopkeepers or might be still some landlords who are not willing or not able to, for whatever reasons, or for whatever those reasons are, who aren't going to refurbish their demise. Do we have the ability to step in with whatever those abilities will be in order to make sure that those units do get renovated? Because what we wouldn't want to do is renovate 9 out of 10 units and have the one unit that's not renovated, because that would spoil the apple that spoils the pot, maybe.
So a couple of things there. In terms of branding, we are actually going to start having conversations about that in the next couple of weeks internally. But also it's something that we recognise it's something we need to do. Like, for example, you come through Usk and it's the town of flowers. What is Caldecott's USP going to be? And we absolutely need to address that, and we're aware of that. In terms of the future of high streets, Deb and I went to an event in London, actually. It was one of these that just ticked all the boxes in terms of agenda items. But if for nothing else, what it gave us was comfort that what we were actually doing was the right thing. However, I do agree with you in terms of how do we engage with the private sector. Those are conversations that Deb is having right now. So, in terms of at what point, if and when do we step in? Because yes, absolutely, we can't have a whole row and then one on the end where it doesn't happen. Otherwise, the whole scheme, won't come to. In terms of pop-up shops, the town team have been really successful with that, and they have had a few where they've actually done pop-up and then actually sort of taken on premises. So it's something we need to understand from their learning as well in terms of how we take that forward. So I totally agree with you about different age groups. I also think we need to consider our high streets in terms of the nighttime economy as well. They were talking about something called chameleon retailing, where perhaps it is an art shop during the day or a wine bar at night. It's those kind of things as well. But at the moment, I think if anybody could tell you what the future high street is going to be in 20 years' time, they're going to be a very rich person, because nobody knows, do they? And with all the debate, we met with the Chambers this week, really, and their concerns around business rates, around car parking charges, all sorts of various things that they were bringing in, particularly in terms of Chepstow, and concerns about litter, in terms about sort of seating, that kind of thing. So we understand that each town has its own issues, and I think for us as a team, it's how we provide that bespoke service for each town. Abergavenny is very strong in retail at the minute. It's doing really well, as in Monmouth, but Monmouth can sort of peak and trough. We're whereas Caldecott struggled for a while, so Chepstow is having its issues. So it's understanding where, with the limited resource that we have, can we have the maximum impact? And I think in terms of the TRI funding, it's provided us with that, you know, sort of oomph really. And I take your point in terms of private sector and the contribution, etc. But that 70% intervention rate is really making a big difference. So it's understanding all the nuances, but making sure we're doing it, you know, for the benefit of the community and the future generations to come, really.
Sorry, the only other thing we wanted to add to that, thank you, Kath, is that we need to start looking at it in a town centre repurposing kind of perspective. As Kath said, what is the unique selling point of each town and starting to make a difference in each one. I'm quite keen on us starting to look at a strategic approach to each of the towns, looking at that master planning, working with the town councils, community councils that are in that area to work through that as well, to start to understand the information and knowledge that they've already got that can add to that development of those schemes. So I think this is a really good model. It's the start. We're starting to think that Usk is most probably the next one on the list, and we need to work our way around each of those areas and major conurbations to build up that strategic approach to our towns. Thank you.
Come back on that, yeah.
Just only to come back and just say that, and that's fantastic. Everything that you're saying is fantastic. And for me, I think that none of us know what that future is going to be. None of us, if any of us are wise, we're wise enough to say that none of us know what the future is going to be. And I think what we've done in the past with town centres is we've said, you know, we're going to create this landscape. This is what it's going to be. This is where you're going to have your banks. This is where you're going to have your shops. This is where this is going to be. This is going to be the retail protection zones. All these things have come into it, and none of those have necessarily worked. And none of us know what's going to be what the landscape's going to be in 5 years' time. So my only thing would be to say that if we're looking at this, let's look at the space as a creative space. Let's keep that creativity as creative space for the people who want to go in there to create whatever it is they create within it. We're providing that space. We're not necessarily, this has got to be this has got to be this has got to be that. Because whatever it is we design today, in 10 years' time, we'll look back at it and say, well, what was you thinking? Why did we have a... So that's you know, and I know, and it's lovely to hear the sort of fresh thinking that's coming from that side. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Strong.
Yeah, it's just to thank Kath for assistance with Usk in Bloom the other day in the presentation that was made. I'm glad that Usk is next, hopefully next on the list. I look forward to working with Kath and with Francis. The town council are anxious, I know, to try and renovate the town. The main problem, as you all know, is the heavy traffic going through the town, and we're not likely to get a bypass in the next generation, I wouldn't have thought. But there are shops do close, but others are reopening, and it's a question of, as you said, it's of getting the right product in the right place. So we will work as closely as we possibly can, and I'm sure that it will be successful. And thank you for Caldecott as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to Francis. When you said that you're in negotiations with the parking in Church Road, could you let us local councils know the outcome of that, please?
I'll find out some more information and just make sure that that's correct, but it's my understanding that it is being looked at, so yes, we'll share that information as soon as we can.
Okay, Councillor Devi.
Just a short one. I'm sure I'd only just come back to Chepstow to live when the original Chepstow makeover happened. I'm sure if you look at that, there is probably every mistake in the world there that you could come across, and perhaps you could tick those off to make sure that the same isn't happening again. But one of the big issues, I think, with all our towns is the parking issue. And within Chepstow, the big problem is that the vast majority of the spaces are taken up by people who actually have business in the town, and they park there all day, virtually. Now, I don't know, really, you're not going to be able to solve that without breaking a few eggs, if you like. But the fact of the matter is, for the towns to survive, people have got to be able to get in there. And there is the other thing, and I know it's being addressed in part, there is the other thing that the fueling for electric cars and whatnot. Now that is going to be a demand thing. There might be revenue in that for the council as well. So that should be something that is being looked at along with that. And just ringing a bell that maybe our chairman and I might borrow a little bit of your time sometime. The one thing that went wrong with as well with Chepstow was when they did the redevelopment, they didn't do anything to north of the bridge. I'm sure Jez has got an interest as well because it's his ward. But that would make a huge difference to Chepstow because that would provide a big retail offer. But I think it is really timely, the Caldecott rejuvenation, and I hope it goes really very well from them. The designs look fine, I think. Oh, just one thing. You were talking about branding. I don't know. There is probably, all these companies have their own branding style. But I think it would be perhaps an idea if you could find out what the branding styles most common are, or indeed you set a branding style for the town. So as you get something that looks as one. I know some towns that have architectural interests, etc. They say this is what you can have, and I believe we've done that in parts of Chepstow. So you might be able to do that as well to make those sound. But very good.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we'll be looking at as part of the design centre manual. But just to say, in terms of car parking, it's something we're looking at as a directorate. I don't know if you want to add a bit more.
Very mindful around the sort of the car parking strategy that we've currently got. We're going to sit down and start to look at that in a more holistic fashion, so that we can start to understand the issues that are arising in each of the towns associated with car parking. We're seeing different trends in different areas, different patterns impacting upon residential areas, impact on business. So that we need to look at the car parking sort of arrangements, policies, approaches. Do we need more? Do we need less in different areas, different sizes, different styles? So it's something we've taken as a piece of work to look at, and in conjunction with Roger looking at it from an operations and highways infrastructure context, but also with Kath looking at it from that economic development enterprise angle as well. So trying to apply the different lenses to the dilemma around car parking.
Okay, Councillor Devi, happy with that? Yep. No, I'm just you're happy with that response? Yeah, that's okay. Councillor Roden.
Thank you, Chair. It appears that you used a certain kind of process in Caldecott that you've gone through, and I just wondered if there was a template for this that other towns could possibly use at the town council level in order to start populating the information that you might require in the future, and if so, I'd be quite keen to have a look at that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or observations? No. Okay, Councillor Becker.
Just if I was going to give one piece of advice learnt from the lessons of Chepstow, don't stick a massive immovable statue of a naked sailor somewhere where you want to put market stalls.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that has been commented about in the press, I think. Can I thank Kath for the presentation? Obviously, has been reiterated this morning, the sort of the challenge of anticipating the needs of the future high street environment. I think we almost need sort of Denise Coates-esque view of what she did with online betting, in terms of trying to anticipate what the high street will look like in 15, 20 years' time. But it's clear that, developing a framework here, a blueprint which can be developed and rolled out across other towns, obviously taking into account, the specific USP of those towns in their own right, and it's obviously important that you get, that community buy-in, and it's good that you've done that from the very start, working with the town council and other community teams, as well as the private sector. We've obviously looked at extension of Church Road. They obviously need, in terms of congestion there and traffic, that area needs improvement to develop more efficacious commuting, because of particularly the two schools there. Touched on shared workspace, and I'm sure Councillor Becker will provide you with his insights, because he's a regular user across the water. Grant funding in relation to private landlords. We touched on that 70-30 split. Is that the right ratio? And it is given a substantial benefit to private landlords, and I think we touched on issues around that in relation to market failure, and when do government and when do local authorities step in and work with private sector to improve the offer. Car parking, obviously a big issue, not just in Caldecott but all our towns. I think was sort of the general theme from discussions, and that needs to be worked through. Access to public transport. Again, in terms of public access to the cross space there, it's important that we engage with those disability groups, those with sensory impairment, that they're fully on board with changes that are going to be made. The importance of enhancing primary care services, absolutely right. Obviously, that needs to be worked through with the LHB. There is a national primary care strategy that's being pushed forward at the moment. Obviously, looking at integration, which is the Centre for Healthier Wales, and how that's going to work, with social care and community services. But that is something that's obviously got to be led by the health board. I think Councillor Feakins said about in terms of urban development or residential development, that it needs to be multifaceted. It needs to be needs to appeal to broad social and economic demographic. Absolutely right. We've already seen in the LDP, at the start of the LDP review, the need for more one and two bedroom properties, and not just at the top end, the luxury end. It's got to be across the market piece, really. Space for pop-up retail, and I think again it was Councillor Feakins, was saying that we're developing a creative space to allow it to develop and morph freely in the future. We not sort of creating a something that can be or is going to be put in aspect. It's got to be allowed to be flexible and allowed to develop. So that's really important. There's obviously no formal recommendations to this. This was just an update. We're really pleased in terms of where it's going, and we certainly welcome you back for further updates in the future. So thank you very much for that. Okay, item number 6 is then the presentation regarding events, new methodology for events and lessons learned, and I think Tim is going to take us through that. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I'm Tim Lewis. I look after the events and special projects team. And since we were recommissioned by yourselves in July, I thought I'd just bring you back with an update of how we're operating at the moment. Mainly since we've done our first major event since our kind of relaunch, which was the Caldecott Fireworks 2018 held at Caldecott Castle. So just to give you an update of how that event went specifically, but also the new methodology we used behind that to achieve that and to get the outcomes that we did. So firstly, a little bit of background on the event. So the event has now been under MCC. We've underwritten it for the past 5 years. We took it on from the small community group and collective of town team members a few years ago, as it was getting a bit too big for them, as particularly the site is of difficult nature. So we stepped in to help them deliver it. For various reasons, that's morphed into Monmouthshire County Council running it on their behalf. And over this 5-year period, we've grown from having about 3,000 people to selling out to an average of 7,000 over the past 4 years. It's now become one of the premier fireworks events, winter events in South Wales. Costs have increased over that time to ensure that we deliver a safe, first and foremost, safe and enjoyable event. This site, as I mentioned, is a tricky site. It's a very big site, very open site. Due to the CADU regulations, there's not a lot of lighting installed, etc. It is quite a tricky location for a number of reasons, so it is quite expensive. And putting on an event for 7,000 people, it is an expensive task, and it's got to be right. So costs have gone up that way. This year, for the first time ever, we had sponsorship on a different scale. That's something we've been trying for a couple of years, but this time we really put into action. We certainly haven't maximised, we don't think that, with the sponsorship. It is a large-scale event. 7,000 people gathering for an event in South Wales is a big thing, and companies and organisations are starting to realise, the big potential that is for businesses, particularly, family-oriented businesses. This year, for instance, I'll talk a bit more, but Monmouthshire Building Society was our headline sponsor, who have great interest in particularly young families, young professionals who are looking for mortgages, but also they're quite a big business in the local community there. Just another bit of background, why we lost in 2016. The event is no longer VAT exempt because of the nature and style of the event. So yeah, bit of background. 2016, we lost money on this event. 2017, we broke even, and this year we made profit. So just a comparison between this year and last. We sold 5,899 tickets for a sum of £36,000. We sold about 1,000 more tickets last year. Now, the big issue with us with this event, and I'll go into risk in a minute, is the weather. People wait until the last minute to buy their tickets quite often. What we've encouraged over the past few years is that you must pre-buy, because the event does always sell out. So we do encourage that pre-buy of tickets. People are starting to pick up on that. But as we can see, in the last 3 days, we sell over 2,000 tickets. Last year, nearly 3,000. On the day of was 1,100 last year, and just under 900 this year. So it's a substantial risk in that element that we do sell a lot of our tickets last minute. So ticket sales this year, we launched on the 9th of October, quite late for us. We had a varying decision process that took quite a long time this year to come around to it. We analysed this event, and we will do going into the future as well. But we did a local pre-sale to local families, local people, via letter drop and also local social media channels, giving 4 days of pre-sale available to local people to ensure that they get their tickets. This first spike you can see then on the 12th was when we launched nationwide with Capital FM on radio and launched all of our social media campaigns. And then you can see just a steady increase then over the, as we lead up to the event. Tickets then, NP postcode, so the highest percentage goes to Caldicot, then followed by the Newport area, so East Central Newport, West Newport. We then go into Cwmbran area, and further out into Chepstow and into the valleys as well. We're really picking up people from all over coming into this event now. One of the main reasons for that is that we are known as the safe family event. Families feel very, very safe at this event. We spend a good amount of money on infrastructure making it safe. We've got a really good security presence, a great volunteer local presence, fantastic medical services, and it's so much more than just turning up to watch some fireworks set up in the sky. It's a whole sort of castle and winter experience. And then outside of the MP postcode, the largest area we sell to is Cardiff, so over 500 tickets gone there. And then we've got Gloucester, Bristol, so the southwest we're really picking up in, and then Swansea is the next one. But we've got tickets sold to Rochester, Plymouth, Torquay, Wakefield, Worcester, Birmingham, all over. These aren't where somebody has been on a train in Birmingham and bought their ticket. This is their home location that the tickets have been sent to. So make of that what you will. They may be on a trip locally, but they've heard about this event and they want to come. So we are attracting a large number of people into Caldicot and into one of our main venues, which is great. So comparison between 2018 and 2017 ticket sales then, you can see they're very much on track. However, this year the pre-sale was picked up. People are getting the message that they want to come to this event, so they'll buy tickets. So the blue line is 2017, as you can see in the week before. That picked up a lot more last year because, to be honest, we were building the site in the week and it was absolutely horrible for all of the week, and the forecast for the weekend wasn't particularly wonderful. So yes, you can see that last year did pick up in the last week. We're very confident that if the weather forecast had been a bit more in our favour, we certainly would have hit our sellout of 7,500 tickets there. A bit about the event reach then. So our single social media campaign reached 106,000 people. So that's people who've seen our event and engaged with it. That's just on our Facebook. That doesn't take into account, that's Monmouthshire's Facebook alone. That doesn't take into account Capital FM or any of other of those areas. So social media, we know, is the biggest way to get in touch with people about events. We utilise our guys in the comms team for that. They do a fantastic job of knowing it's all down to when you post things on social media, hitting the right targets, using paid campaigns to really get in touch with the right people. In terms of media presence, Wales Online, we're in their top 10 events for Wales fireworks events. We're in the papers, on the internet, and Visit Wales. We're highly recommended on there. And then Waitrose nationwide, we were their recommended event for November in all the stores across, which is yeah, great. I didn't manage to get a copy of that one. I've attached, you've got this presentation, there's just some links to some of the main articles that were out there in the news world. We didn't feature a lot in the local newspapers this year, which is a good thing, I think. Previously, we've had some bad press in there, but everything seems to be very positive this year. We're in a partnership with Capital FM. This is just a little bit about what they do for us. So our paid campaign with them reaches 246,000 people in the lead up to the event. So 23.6% of all people in South Wales hear it, and they'll hear that message an average of 4.9 times across the 4 weeks leading up to the event. Sorry, that's quite detail heavy, but that's just a schedule about how we're on the air with them and all they do for us. They run competitions. Enticing people, they run drive campaigns. What they also do is relay our information to our customers brilliantly. So we had things about the weather. We were telling people, you know, please dress up, please dress sensibly. The weather's not great. They're able to put that out there and on their social media channels, and that gets out brilliantly quickly. Decision making then. So the process behind launching an event, we've really been looking into how we do that this year. This event is quite a good one to look at because it is a risk. We know that the weather is a risk and the nature of the event is a risk. It's a difficult one. You can't really forecast a huge amount. We haven't in the past anyway to, you know, where are our break-even points? We don't really know. Things have been quite difficult. So we really looked into that this year, particularly with advice from this group about risk analysis. So we did a full risk analysis on this event, which I'll talk a bit more about. But the process as a whole then, we're presented with an idea or an opportunity. With this one, for instance, it's a previous and long-standing event within the community, so we were pretty confident that it would be a success with sales. Assessment of viability, we'll do a full monetary analysis, predict how things can work. Workload assessment as well, just working out how much actually of our time we're going to be spending on this. Is it worth it for the outcomes? Outcomes aren't just financially, but sort of community benefits and for the local area as well. We take those into consideration. Full operational management and planning then, so the full planning of the event, as you can imagine, with 7,000 people involved and pyrotechnics, there's an awful lot of safety management planning to do, full event planning. We now run all of the ticketing in-house via Visit Monmouthshire, so we take on all of that as well. Event day delivery and manpower. Completion then, we deliver the event successfully on the day. And then one of the most important things is evaluation for us post-event. So what went well, what didn't go well, looking at it financially. Safety is paramount, obviously publicity. We look at all of those things and speak to all of our stakeholders to really gain an understanding of whether this event was a success. Yes, Facebook might tell us that it was brilliant and everybody loved it. However, the facts and figures might tell us a different story. So it's a really important process for us is sitting down afterwards to do that evaluation, taking all of that content in, learning from it, and then sitting down as a team to just understand a bit more about whether it's viable for the future or not. And then obviously future planning. Business proposal then. We've got a new way of budgeting for events, a new system devised with Dave Loader, our accountant, a new way of being able to analyse the costs involved and then produce break-even points, etc., and giving us targets to work towards. I sent these out, but I have got copies here as well. In fact, I can pull it up on the screen. Don't know if you can see that. Sorry, give me a second. There we go. Sorry, I tried to embed that into the presentation, but the computer wasn't having any of it. This is just a financial assessment pro forma. So if we've got an event, there'll be an initial version of this, which will give us some facts and figures. So from previous experience, we kind of knew the numbers that we talk in. We knew the ticket prices. We could estimate then how many people would turn up and create our break-even points, looking at all the costs involved, detailed here. Any additional costs, and then all of our income streams. We were then able to come up with figures that would give us our break-even points. So, we needed to, on this event, for instance, sell about 5,500 tickets to break even. And then you've got all of these lift points along here that would give you an ideal figure of where you could be. That gives us an amazingly clear picture of how we could work it. It also makes us relook at the budget and we go, right, okay, these figures aren't looking wonderful. How do we make this work? This year we cut our costs by about £3,000 on expenditure of the budget. We pulled back in some areas, but we really looked at how we could better the event. One of the main things we didn't want to do was detract from what people expected. So we weren't going to take off loads of the interesting bits and pull back because we don't want to lessen their experience. But we just really carefully thought about how we did things and how we spent our money. So that's just a budget sheet. What you can see there is our net profits predicted on 6,000 tickets was £5,992. On the column on the right-hand side then is just our actuals figure. So our expenditure was underspent by about £200 there. And then our income, obviously with the new ticket sales, we sold less because of the weather. And that gives us an accurate reading. So this year we made £3,710 profit. So we're going in the right direction. We're getting there with this event. So yeah, I'll just go back to the presentation. So the business proposal just really does give us a good indication of what's going on. Finance have got a way more involvement in that now. And actually this proposal, when it's finalised prior to the event, before we launch the event, it's actually signed off by Kath and Francis as well, and the senior accountant, to say that actually, yes, we've all looked at this, we're happy that it's going to go ahead. So it's very much not a one-man band. We're not going ahead and putting events on. We are fully analysing what we're doing there, and it is signed off by senior members. Risk analysis then, that was something this group really asked us to look into. All the risks related to the event, not just monetary, but community-related risks, financial risks, as well as safety, all of the different presenting things that might come into play, which culminated in us producing a risk management plan, which is on this one. This is a pro forma we now use. It's very much a work in progress. To be honest, this is the first time we've used it. So we're learning from it. But the main areas we look at are personnel risk, financial, reputational, public risk, surrounding community and county-wide implications. I will produce this with the event team leading up to the event, and the copies will be sent to, in this case, to Kath and to Dave to have a look over, and we will all come to a conclusion about whether we do it. This is all just a bit about how it works in line with the council's risk management procedure. I won't bore you with all the detail, but we talked there, we split all of those elements down and really looked into them to see, is this event worth our while? At the end of the day, it is £3,000 profit. What are the risks? Is it worth taking? We looked through these fully, and due to the community implications, the footfall this brings into Caldecott annually is brilliant. The press we get from it is great. The return visits from the people who turn up and see a castle is fantastic. There are so many pros that we concluded, actually, yes, we should go ahead with this event. With the new sponsorship and with the new business pro forma, we felt that we could go ahead with this, and the presenting risks we could minimise. if anybody would like any more information just on that risk management plan, I'd be more than happy to share it with you again. Sponsorship then. It's growing, but we don't think it's at potential. So this year, as I said, we have Monmouthshire Building Society as our headline sponsor, along with Caldicot Town Council, and then supplier sponsors. So these are people who give goods in kind, or will give a certain amount of money, up to £1,000, but mainly sponsorship and goods. So we had 3 of those for this year. In return for that, they get a sponsor-specific agreement is drawn up to agree what we're going to give them in return for what amount, but it will be massive brand exposure. The amount of people we can reach, the power of social media is amazing, and if their logo, if their brand is on every bit of our material that gets out there, that's a huge reach for them, and they really see the benefit of that. Complimentary tickets to the event, and also opportunities on air with Capital FM. So the drive time campaign for tickets was sponsored by Monmouthshire Building Society. That gets their name out there. On stage presence then, launching the actual fireworks themselves. They ran a competition in their Caldicot shop, I think, to get a family to launch tickets. And then a presence on site. They had kind of stalls and people just interacting with the community. Community engagement for then. We have a great, an amazing volunteer community in Caldicot. And they started this event many, many years ago, the community groups, and we've helped them develop it, and they're still delivering what Caldicot Fireworks is for us and many other events. They come along, they make a very large-scale event feel very local, and that's the feedback we get from the people that come from all over. They are on the gates, they are around the park, they are taking tickets, they are welcoming people to Caldicot, and then they're pointing them around site, but they're also pointing in the direction of the local pub, the bus station, the local restaurants, the chip shop. These are people that know their surroundings, and they do an absolutely fantastic job of welcoming people into Caldicot and then sending them back out again. It's just a few comments we've had in. Well done to all the volunteers on site at the entrances and in our streets. We loved it. Awesome display as always. Huge thank you to the volunteers. And I loved, this is from one of the volunteers themselves, I love being part of something that really felt like a community working together. That's amazing feedback for us to have, that we as a council can be involved with the community to create something that they've seen grow from a few local people to 7,000 people most years. And they feel really, really proud of that. With community engagement, then, we use Kinetic, which is the new county-wide system this year to sign up our volunteers. So we had 29 in total from Caldicot, Mager and surrounding areas, various organisations and individuals. As I said, they make the difference for a lot of people who come to the event. In return for that, obviously, they come because they want to volunteer, but those community groups will get plugged on stage. Their content will go up on our big screens, advertising, Christmas fairs, etc., things like that. And they've got an opportunity to fundraise and raise their brand awareness as well. MCC involvement then. The fostering team came for the second year. This year, they find it a really, really brilliant place to engage with the public. Just a feedback from them. They actually had one person who has, I'm not sure whether they've fully committed yet, but are very, very interested in fostering a child. They've come back and say, actually, the cost of foster care is so high that we only need to get one person per event, and they're doing really, really well. I don't know the facts and figures behind, I'm afraid, but you know, the monetary saving that could be for us is massive, but also for that child is amazing. So it's a great experience for them. It promotes the venue. Return visits, we know, work. People get to know our venue. A lot of people don't know Caldicot Castle exists. People are aware it's there now, and they will come back in the summer to see it again in the daylight. Secondary income, town centre, pubs, restaurants, shops and taxi firms. We actually shut our event at 8 p.m. We don't need to do that. We could keep open. We could keep making money on the fair. We could keep making money on the concessions. We shut at 8 o'clock, and the majority of people will leave straight after the fireworks, but they go out into the town centre, and we encourage people to do that. We encourage people to go and have a meal in Fratelli's, the local Italian. We encourage them into the pubs. We don't keep them in. We send them out into the community. But the car parks are out in the community as well, so they have the chance to actually walk through the town centre, and what Kath's been discussing would be great for us with our events, so we can get people straight from the castle out into the town, into there. Department collaboration then, working closely with ESAG, highways, grounds, our contact centres, our comms department, museums, leisure and planning. We're working much more cohesively together to create, just a much better working plan to make sure that things are delivered well. And actually, we've got amazing experience and a wealth of contacts within our own organisations that we don't need to go externally for. I know it's really starting to pull on those a little bit more. I mentioned ticketing. We now do this fully in-house, and it's something that we're developing. We're no longer going to a third-party provider to ticket for this event, and hopefully development for the future will mean we can bring all events ticketing in-house. We use the eShop. Kevin in tourism sort of manages this with Virginia. Second year in a row for us using it. It's completely controlled and monitored and processed by us. So it is a little bit of work. However, we did it last year, so that this year's it was an absolute breeze, if I'm honest. It made life much easier because the hard work was done last year. Having it all in-house makes it so much easier. It makes it easier for the public. It makes it easier for us. System development then. We fed back to the eShop last year, and they've actually developed the system in line with things that we want. So we're developing our in-house resources now. We're not going out third party, as I said. We are making more of what we've got inside. So this year we said, you know what, we'd really love to be able to scan our tickets on the gate. They weren't able to do that 8 months ago. We've now worked with them to introduce that scanning facility onto the tickets. We had 18 issues that needed resolving out of 3,027 points of sale. So for us, that's a great figure to have 18. That could be a refund, or it could be a bank transfer hasn't gone through, or anything really simple to do with the computer end of it. To have 18 out of that many points of sale is quite good. 13 refunds in total due to we just had a couple of complaints that we dealt with on site. We felt it was best to issue those refunds, and to do with double ticket purchasing as well. So that's just a bit about that. We're trying to bring as much as we can in-house now, so we can become really self-sufficient. And that's run via Visit Monmouthshire website, so the ticketing is fully done by there. We know that the increase footfall on the website is massive around this time, but 25% of all those people who buy tickets don't just leave, they go onto a different area of that website. So we can monitor where they're going. They're not just buying tickets, they're going on to see what else is available at Christmas. They're looking at what else is on around Monmouthshire. They're taking other links to go to different places on the council websites. There's just a bit more information about the tracking there. So evaluation then. We'll be having our debrief meeting shortly. We deliberately leave it a few weeks after the event to get all of the information in, but we meet with the stakeholders involved. So we're the financiers, so we'll work closely with Kath and with Dave to ensure that we're happy with where we are with things. The ticket management team, event management team, all of our security, and the Caldecott Castle as well. We'll debrief, we'll feed back, and then we'll create an evaluation that will enable us to make a picture for the future, and that'll be fully documented as well. So the future for this event, then, we need to think carefully about what we do with it. There are questions around ADM site recharge. You know, if we need to pay a vast amount of money for this community event, it's not going to work for us, so we just need to think carefully about that. There is risk attached to this event. We demonstrated this year, we sold 1,000 less tickets because of some rain the day before. However, with the sponsorship and our careful budget management, we made more money than we ever have before. So it's weighing up those risks. The location is a difficult one, dealing with residents. We have fantastic residents around the castle who are really engaging and actually are very proactive in not coming to us with huge problems and shouting at us. They're coming to us with, this is a slight issue, what can we try and do to rectify it together? I had 2 in the lead up to the event. And what they were completely amicable about closing some further cul-de-sacs further up the road. And they said, yeah, it's a little bit of an issue. And I said, brilliant, I'm going to try and put these measures in place. Can you please feed back to me after the event and let me know how it's gone? And they've been really great at doing that. It's quite a positive conversation. Yes, you know, there are people who really don't like it, but this event particularly is done and dusted in 4 hours. So they see the disruption as quite minimal there. Just thinking about the development for the future then, have we gone as far as we can with this event? We're at kind of capacity. We didn't obviously sell out this year. It's a really great thing. So we just need to think about where we go with it. So that's mainly the events. I hope that's given just a bit more detail in a whirlwind about where we are, but how we come to conclusions and how we make decisions. The events team in general then has been doing quite a bit more over this period. We were involved in we lit the Shire Hall for the World War I commemorations. We worked closely with the museums partnership there. We had a big screen that relayed all of the images and information about people from Monmouth who died in the First World War. Loads of the community came out and engaged with that, and it's really good actually for us to light our landmarks like that, and that's been around the press and all over the place at the moment, so it's great to be working with them. Monmouthshire Youth Pride this year was the first time they'd done that event. Working with us and us working with them, we were able to create something really special in that sense. Full event management was provided for that. They wanted to do something, they were very ambitious. They don't quite fully realise the amount of effort that goes into organising an event for 1,000 people. So we were able to help them with that and create something that we can build on to the future. Our external then, this is just one picture of one of the events, South Wales Argus Business Awards. We sort of use, we provide production facilities for them via another company, so our external productivity is going up. We're outsourcing when we're not busy to other companies. We're using our resources, using our expertise. That's all our lighting equipment there that we own is being used, it's being hired out. We go and manage events for other people, so that when we're quiet, we're actually bringing income in to help offset the cost of the events team as a whole. There's a bit more about external event work there, just some of the places we've been in the Royal Albert Hall this month, stage managing there, Business Health and Care Awards, BBC National Orchestra of Wales, Morgan Motor Company. We're working all over the place in very different facets. They're hiring our equipment or they're using our staff. Internal corporate work then, you can see this for yourself if you look through. Just we're all around the county and trying to engage much more with all our different departments to help them deliver their different needs, particularly working in the Market Hall in Abergavenny, looking at what we can do there with events and tying that into the Borough Theatre as well. We're working with Outdoor Education at the moment to try and utilise some of their sites. They want to engage with events. Shire Hall, Monmouth, Caldecott Castle, and obviously the standards that come through like Velathon and Run for Wales as well. And then community support, supporting local events. We're doing Christmas Lights Switch On, providing equipment and staff to help run those. We're getting behind and sort of supporting loads of up-and-coming little festivals, helping them to navigate the world of ESAG. We know that that's something we need to help local event organisers do. We have some amazing volunteers and event organisers out there in our communities who are doing amazing things, and I feel we should probably, we feel we should help them do that and help them achieve more, very much in their planning, understanding of safety at events, and helping them achieve the best possible outcomes. That's pretty much it. Just our work streams at the moment are community events, as I said, really helping communities to jump forward. We've been doing that this week. I don't know whether you saw Chapter 8 training. Road closure training has been going on, working with Jude Langdon. Every year you get the commemorations that happen on the 11th of November. People have to shut roads. It costs them a lot of money to do that. Community members, community groups. So we've been training them up so they can do that themselves. They can hire the equipment. They are legally allowed and trained to manage traffic, which saves them huge amounts of money when they're doing these things. But that's just the start of hopefully quite a substantial training campaign for community groups, so they can really start to get more going on in their communities, because we know that events are brilliant at bringing people together. External contracts, as I said, training for us. We're heavily involved with the Borough Theatre still, bringing new acts and developing operations there. We had Rod Gilbert in a few months ago, which was a great success, but really developing what's going on there with the new theatre manager, Dave Baxter. We're preparing for the summer, having a look at a couple of conversations. A couple of our sites have caught the eye of some promoters. So we're really making sure that, they work for us, and actually if we're ready to take on those kind of events. Planning for major events in the future and coming up with a strategy for that, and also the Mon Life partnership, working across the different sites in terms of events management as well. So that's just a brief overview. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks very much. Really robust presentation there. Questions, Councillor Davis?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Congratulations on making a profit. I mean, this is an event that's been going on for many years, and I know that Caldecott Town Council have made a contribution for many, many years, as long as I can remember anyway. Not sure what it is now, but it's a few £1,000s, I know. And one of the things I wrote down before I saw one of your slides there was sponsorship opportunities, and you recognise that this is a big event becoming bigger, and there's lots of opportunities I would suggest for more sponsorship there, so you recognise that. Congratulations on your hard work, because I go down there every day with my dogs, and I saw the work that was going on. I saw yourself running around and others. Putting any event on is not easy. But particularly with the weather we were having at the time, it was particularly difficult, so congratulations on that. As a resident of Church Road, there was no disruption as far as traffic was concerned, and no vandalism that I'm aware of. I sit in the back room because I got 2 dogs and they don't like the noise, but apart from that, so congratulations on all that, and a job well done, I think. You mentioned briefly at the end about the future, and I think we all recognise the potential of that site in terms of generating income for a number of reasons, I suggest, which I won't go into now. But I'm just, I don't want to dwell on the past, and I don't want to discuss the past. But what I will say is, and Councillor Feakin, we speak to many people about risk assessment and risk management, and I would suggest that if we look at expanding events in the castle, which we should do in my opinion, because I think most people in Caldicot that I speak to are very much in favour of it. You know, we've got to carry on that communication and not disrupt people, particularly those on Church Road. But I think we need to have a strategic plan in terms of the scale of those events, because there's a big learning curve, I suggest, still to be, you know, there's lots of lessons to be learned about margins, predicting the margins, and that sort of thing. And I would hope that as time goes on, we start off a little bit smaller perhaps than we did last time and build our way up rather than start at the top and, you know, have some sort of issues. So, and the other thing you mentioned, of course, which is particularly relevant to the last item we spoke about, which is Caldicot Town Centre, is how much revenue these events bring into the town centre. Because I know at the VW event, for example, you see people going up and down where they've made their own little trolleys and wagons and the kids are riding on the back and they're going down to do their shopping and coming back. So there's a very, very significant economic impact for the town centre, I think. So I'm very impressed with it. The risk management system, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at it too closely, but I'm sure, you know, if Councillor Feakin and myself will be very happy to help if there's anything we can do there. But there's a huge potential here. We need to go about it slowly and steadily and build our way up, I would suggest. So thanks for your presentation. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Councillor Roden.
Thank you, Chair. Super presentation, super result, I think. Great stuff. Just curious how you actually determine the ticket price and whether you would possibly consider discounting price before the last couple of days in order to reduce risk if the weather changes, and do you actually compare your pricing with competitor firework events, just to give me some sort of feel for that aspect? Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. So we very much look at our pricing structure compared to the other events around the place. I think we're about £1 less, forgive me on the figures, whether they've changed, than Cardiff, the big one in the park there. We've got ones at the Celtic Manor and things. I think the problem is some people locally obviously haven't been to the fireworks for a few years, may argue about the price. It's a very different product than it was 5 years ago. Actually, it's far bigger. You're getting much more for your money, and we are on par with these very large displays around Wales, which is why the cost has gone up. We look the ticket price this year stayed the same as last year. We don't think we needed to put it up. I certainly wanted to keep it as low as we could and affordable, particularly for families. So I think we're happy, and we chatted with Dave. We did look at the figures. Around the reducing costs, we did try and think about that for as an incentive to buy early. Realistically, the lowest we could probably go is £1.50 cheaper to do that early. But because people wait so late to buy their tickets anyway, we kind of weighed that up and thought, well, are they going to buy the tickets? It might encourage some. We don't believe that they might, for the sake of £3 saved on a family coming, are they going to wait anyway until 2 days before? I don't know. So yes, we can look at that in the future. We did look into it this year, but to make sure we kept the sort of status quo and that we could use the facts and predict as much of a positive outcome, we remain the same. Resident early access to tickets goes down really well. We'd love to be able to discount that a little bit more if possible. We just need to kind of figure out how we can do that in a way that works and makes the numbers add up. Unfortunately, people do wait to buy their tickets, but we believe we're on par, and actually a little bit. We believe you get more bang for your buck, excuse the pun, for your money than some of these other displays.
Thank you. And a second point, if I may. We have a Christmas lantern parade in Monmouth. There's going to be at least 2,000 people present this year. I noticed that you have a set of services that you might be able to offer. Would you be interested in quoting for stage lighting, etc., for the next year? Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, we can do that for you. We do the same for Councillor Evans, actually, for Caldecott Christmas Light Switch On and a number of other events around the county. We feel that we're able to offer a good service, but actually is a bit more accessible for community groups, and we certainly would offer very good rates in terms of manpower and help with that at a community level. I've been looked at, so good rates, yeah. But that's what we can hopefully do, so yeah, please get in touch.
Yeah, certainly will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Roden. Councillor Fegans.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim, for your brief presentation. It's very informative. No, it was very full. Just regarding risk, very quickly, I see that you have looked at and considered personnel risk. Obviously, without looking back in time, but there's obviously a key person risk that we need to be mindful of always, because if you've got one key person who's taking something forward and that key person is ill or coming forward, moving into that final segment of that delivery, then there's some significant down issues for that. But also I think that we need to be recognising that the events team where you are at the moment, you've got probably two different, it's becoming two different beasts. You've got events over here and marketing over here. I'm not so sure that we should possibly be looking at and delivering both of those elements. It might be the time to start thinking about, well, okay, if we're very good at delivering events over here, and those events are enabling us to sell marketing over here, that we should be speaking to a marketing company to sell our marketing. Because I think the marketing revenue that you've got so far for 7,000 head at very, very specific demographic, the amount of money you've realised for, I know it's early stages, and this is something for the future, no criticism for where we are to date, hats off to you for making a profit. But I do think that really you should keep that in your sight, that you've got events team over here, marketing over here. Let's speak to the outside marketing people to see really how much we can deliver out of that marketing revenue, how much revenue we can deliver out of that marketing element of our events. And I think it would be significant, and I think it would put a whole new angle for the way you deliver events. And I think the one will shape the other, but I think they definitely need to be starting to look at as different elements of revenue stream.
Absolutely, yes. You both mentioned the past there. It's completely relevant and important that we don't forget that and we learn from it. Marketing in the past was a big problem for us. And actually, we need to recognise what we're good at and what we're not. We as a team are very good at physically delivering events. We're not marketing experts. We're not experts in a lot of things. And what we're doing now internally is using the expertise we have in places like the comms team, but our highways department. That's just the start of it, but certainly realising actually we're not best placed to be delivering some of these things. So who can we pull on to make sure that we have the best possible outcome? So thank you for that, yeah.
And more specifically from my point of view, it's not so much the marketing of our own events. I think we're very, very good at that. It's selling the advertising space. If we've got 7,000 people coming or 100,000 people viewing one single web page, that revenue potential from that itself is very significant.
Councillor Davis.
Sorry, Chair, I forgot. Didn't read all my notes. I'll have to remind myself. I read your presentation at home, and I'm sure I picked up in a reference to long hours for staff. Now, we know this was a one-off event, and any of us that's managed anything knows that you go through stages of working long hours, but that can't go on indefinitely. It's not sustainable. So I've been listening to these conversations, and I think if we can expand, and I think that's definitely what we should be doing, events at this facility and in others, then that has an implication for resources, I think, and for staff, because we don't want our staff continually working long hours, or, and taking on from Matt's point, I do wonder whether internally we should be looking at how we organise the team in terms of should the marketing be a strategic part of the team, if you understand what I mean, rather than separate, because then that's an extra resource that you can utilise, rather than buy in expertise. Have we got the expertise, but perhaps because they are separate in separate silos, that we're not getting the best out of them? Just a thought, but I think it's something we need to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, Kath, yeah.
Thanks, Alan. I mean, that is something we're talking about ourselves, because we are actually looking at how we look at our marketing and comms with Borough Theatre as well, in terms of how we can cross-market, cross-promote opportunities. So we are, although they do sit in a different team, we do have very, very regular conversations with Abby and Rhian and Dowie. So whether that we can take it to the next stage is something that we can take back, actually, and have a discussion with them. So thank you.
Matt, go on, Councillor Figgins.
Just ask a question. Is this part of the business going to go across the ADM? No.
No, the events team will stay within the authority. There's a very strategic link with the Borough Theatre as well, so it's staying within the authority. However, we are having discussions in terms of joint ventures and promotions and that kind of thing, so they work very closely together. In a promotional sort of income generational capacity where both entities can benefit, not on a competition basis. We're very clear about that.
Councillor Devi.
Thank you for mentioning Borough Theatre, because I put it down here. A lot of the events that they have up there, they have speakers that turn up. Anybody who is interested in come dancing would have noticed that Anton was there the other week. I didn't go. I couldn't find my shiny shoes. But the what I was interested in, is there any other venues? I mean, it came to my mind that we have in Chepstow, we have the castle. You could have an open-air venue in the summer. You could have speakers, if you like, there. And, of course, we have the drill hall. So there is the possibility of there being another avenue for making a few more shekels there. Is that being considered?
Yes, it is. Part of our workload at the moment is assessing what we've got around the county. We've got some wonderful spaces, small like you're mentioning, but also the green spaces. We're working closely with Nigel Leeworthy at the moment to figure out, actually, we've got loads of fantastically large, brilliant green spaces where community events happen on a regular basis. We probably need to maintain a bit more knowledge about how those work, how they come to fruition, try and take a bit of the workload off the grounds team and try and get all of these spaces, these areas, into a central location. And actually, when someone comes to us with an event idea, we can go, oh, brilliant, we've got a fantastic place in Chepstow, or we've got this other place in Abergavenny. We'd certainly love to know, about all of these little village halls and all of these places that are capable of having events right around the county. We're working with the community development team as well to think about things like touring cinemas that can go around in the cinema to all of these rural village halls. There's lots of ideas, but certainly venues we want to try and get a grasp on to realise what we've got and try and utilise it as best we can.
The thing that interested me about the Borough Theatre, they have what I would call boutique events, if you like, almost. I mean, we mentioned that Anton as one of them. But you've had, doing the same sort of thing, people like David Attenborough and whatnot coming in. I know the library in Chepstow, down in St. Mary Street, I can't think of what the name is now, they have had speakers in as well. So there is a market here to be able to explore and perhaps expand. I mean, if you were talking about a particular author coming or somebody rather like that, and he was brought in by a book retailer, then perhaps we could move it up a notch so he could get a bigger audience, and it would be profitable for us to do as well. It's just an area worth exploring, I thought.
Thanks, Councillor Livy. Any other questions? Councillor Becker.
All very good with the events. Slightly connected, you mentioned the Chapter 8 training and the other training that you're trying to offer to volunteers. I think that's brilliant, especially from a Chepstow point of view. We're looking at play schemes in the community where you play in the road and we shut down the road, so that's very useful. What I'd like to see, if we can, is try and move that so that it's more accessible to those volunteers, because they already give up their time some of them coming over to here to get trained, I think, especially during work hours, if we can do maybe some sessions that are not in work hours and possibly use the technical capabilities of this chamber to perform it in a webinar session so they don't have to physically attend, that would be really useful, because these people give up a lot of their time, and that they're keen to take that training and make the most of it, but I think we need to make it as easy and frictionless as possible for them to get it. So.
Thanks, Councillor Becker. Any other comments? I've just got one, and I don't know whether it's for you, Tim, or for Kath, in terms of the internal corporate work. And you've got Velathon Wales there. What's the future of Velathon Wales?
Quite a hot topic, actually. We had notification, was it this week or last, that it's not going to be going ahead anymore. So I know Hazel has been trying her utmost to get them here in terms of the economic impact assessment data, but I'm not sure what response you had actually from Matt Newman or Naomi.
Yes, the committee were aware that that the position with the future funding, we discussed in the pre-meeting, but I think it would be worth us revisiting it, the discussion, because some of these members weren't here at the pre-meeting. Right. Basically, the Velathon organisers have offered to come to a meeting. 18th of December is our special meeting. They would be willing to come, but I need to take the committee's views really on how productive that will be given the new news. But so far we haven't had any sort of detailed analysis on return on investment to date, and obviously that affects the decision going forward, but I just would like to get members' views on whether it's worth inviting them in to talk about the events that have been held.
Okay, I think we can cover that off in the forward work programme, but I'm just in terms of the monitoring reporting that they provide back to us. I mean, do you still expect to see that, I assume, following,
We would hope so, but we haven't had anything yet. Tim, you're not aware of any data that's come through? No, nothing yet.
Okay. Any other further comments, questions? No. I know there's been criticism of past events, but I don't think anyone in this, particularly this committee, has felt that we should shy away from delivering a strong suite of events that are going to provide community benefit but also financial return, and I think that's really important. But for these events, they have to be developed, implemented and evaluated with a robust methodology, and I think we've got that in place now, and we're working forward using that, which is really positive. So thank you again, Tim, for bringing this to us, and I'm sure you'll be back in the future providing feedback on a range of events that we put on. So thank you very much. Kath?
Sorry, it's just one from me really, as a personal thank you to the team, because as Alan's saying, they do work very long hours and they're so committed, and actually in fairness, the work that they also did at the Borough Theatre this year has been absolutely exceptional. So yeah, thank you from me.
Thanks, Kath. Okay, so if we go on to item 7 then, which is to confirm the following minutes. So 7.1, the Joint Select Committee of Adults and Economy and Development Select on the 7th September. You all happy that we move them? Yeah, move, thank you. And then 7.2, Economy and Development Select on the 27th of September. You all happy that we move them? Yeah, moved, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rudden. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So then item 8 then, list of actions arising from the Economy and Development Select Committee on the 27th of September. As you see there, I think they've the issue of Welsh Government coming back, the Superfast Cymru 2 tender has been finalised, and the successful bidder was BT Openreach. So we'll we'll certainly approach Welsh Government pretty soon to get them back to see us in the new year and to see how that is going to roll out. I know there was, when it was as oral statement was brought to the Assembly plenary, there were some concerns from members there about BT taking the bid and what would that would mean for the second stage, because the elements of the first programme weren't fully realised. Performance and evaluation framework for Mon Life. So we develop a workshop on ADM. That obviously has been put back because of the developments with ADM. There was a sort of moratorium on activity at the start of September, so a fresh view could be taken by the incoming chief officer, and those things have been slowly ironed out now. And it's right, I think, that officers take time to get this absolutely right. And for us as a committee, you know, we do want to do this in a piecemeal way. We want it to come, and you know, if it's, we'll spend a day on it, then we'll spend a day on it, and we'll go through in detail. I think it is important, though, in terms of shaping the ADM workshop, that we have some input on that. I'm just going to ask Alan Davis, Councillor Davis, will he work with me on that, and perhaps the Chief Officer for Enterprise and Mark Howcroft, and we can shape that ahead of that workshop, because I think officers may have one particular view on what they want to present, and you know, in terms of the committee and being the sort of the steering committee of overall scrutiny, you know, I think we should have the sort of final say on that. So we'll take that forward. So item 9 then is the forward work programme. Hazel, do you want to say anything on this?
Yes, just to ensure that everybody's aware now that there is a special meeting to be held on the 18th of December in the afternoon. For some it'll be a long day because there's an adult select that morning. I'd like to take your views really on what should be on the agenda. We've definitely got a report confirmed re-provision proposals for outdoor education. The other item that I was going to include on that meeting, which would make it a 2-meeting item, so would be the Velathon impact assessment, and that was having them to come and talk to us about the return on investment. We've obviously just discussed recent announcements and the implications of that, but the date is available should you wish to call the organisers in. They are available and they're willing to come. So I'd like to just take members' views, please.
Got some views on that, Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the other element which we haven't got in our forward work programme is the procurement initiative. Having got it through council, I'm quite keen to see what the thoughts of Peter Davis and others are on how they intend moving forward on that, because I think as a committee we need to be scrutinising what's going on there and what needs to be done in order to, you know, get the benefits that we think are available. So whether that's for that meeting in December or another meeting, I don't know, but it certainly needs to be part of our forward work programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and can I obviously pay tribute to you for bringing that motion to council. I think it was really worthwhile. I didn't get a chance to speak. I was going to obviously back your motion, but it turned out that there was no sort of rebuff from the cabinet, so which was really positive. So I was going to obviously speak in favour of what you put forward. That is a really important issue. I take your point on that. Perhaps if then Hazel, if we can see if Peter can come back with that for that meeting. I mean, I'm happy if we have a written report from the Velathon, you know, and if we go back and if there's questions that we have, we can put them in writing back to them. But you know, I am keen that they're still held to account, because we give them a sizable chunk of money to deliver this event. You know, it was across several local authorities. I understand that. But they still need to be held to account. So perhaps if we see if Peter can come in with the procurement one first.
And you'd like a written report on Velathon, which questions?
Yeah, and
what questions?
do Well, we need. I think we need. Yeah, yeah. Do we want to pose questions beforehand, or should we wait for their report first and then report back and then ask for specific questions back? Yeah, that's my view.
They've produced in the past is a report on the whole of the Velathon. What they didn't do was necessarily sort of pinpoint where those were for Monmouthshire. So I think that's the experience we had when they came before, and then we said we wanted to understand for our residents the impact that it's had on Monmouthshire. So I can ask them to try and narrow down, but fine. I'm assuming what we might get is the post-event management debrief report, which has a lot of detail for the whole area rather than us specifically, but I will try and ask for that to be narrowed down.
Okay. Thank you. Fine. Councillor Devi?
Just a quick one about these reports. Do we understand the methodology of that they use for finding out what the impact on our residents and business is? I mean, it's. I think we ought to understand that as well as just getting a report here. We want to understand whether that is appropriate or it could be better.
Yeah. That is a really good point, Councillor Devi, and Hazel just saying that it's something that we've asked for previously and hasn't been forthcoming. So we'll ask that again in terms of having that report.
Yeah, I thought my memory might have been a bit flaky.
No, we have asked and it hasn't been forthcoming. So we'll ask again. We'll ask again, as well as that element of narrow focus on the county, if that can be extrapolated from the wider data, and I'm sure it can be. But we'll ask for that. Okay, so the final item then is item 10, which is the Cabinet Work Programme. So obviously for colleagues to look at that. If there's anything there that stands out, you think there should be that we should be looking at, particularly in the new year, let me know. Let Hazel know as well. And we will look at that. So item 11 then, next meetings. So as Hazel alluded to just now, we've got the special meeting on the 18th. Outdoor education is the one, and hopefully procurement might be the other item on that agenda. And then we've got the ordinary meeting of E&D Select on the 10th of January next in the new year. So thanks very much. Thanks very much for your time. Thanks very much for your contributions. See you all soon. Thank you.
This damn diary is like a time.